Good evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Monday, Yom Sheni. Let's light up the darkness with a new wisdom candle. Who's in the house on a Monday? Yehud in South Carolina. Aw, wishing you, Sal, a very happy birthday. At least to 120 in health and happiness. Yom Holadet Sameach. Thank you. It is true. Today is my birthday. It's kind of a big one. I guess I get the senior discount now at the big 6-0. But the new, 60 is the new 50, right? And 50 is the new 40. And I mean, we could just keep getting younger all day. At least if we're young at heart and willing to learn, seeking wisdom by learning from every person, we're spring chickens, aren't we? Bella in Florida, Guy in Ohio, Joe in the Inland Empire, Paul in the Great Northwest, Melissa in Great Neck. Excuse me. Luckily, I have my tea, which I already made a bracha on. Recently, I got this device for myself, little gift, mug warmer. It's awesome. Absolutely awesome. Keeps the tea hot. You don't have to keep drinking. It can, I don't like to drink it so fast, but it keeps it hot. I just love that one. Paul in the Great Northwest, Melissa in Great Neck, Bell in Texas, I'm Yisrael Chai, praying for all the innocents. Amen. This war, please God, let it end as soon, as quickly as possible, with a secure and lasting peace for Eretz Yisrael, for Am Yisrael, and for the whole world. I mean, Iran is a serious terrorist threat, not just to Israel, not just to the United States, to the whole world. They have sponsored terrorist attacks in so many other countries. This is, please God, free the Iranian people, the wonderful Iranian people, from the wicked regime that's been running that country. Belle in Texas, Nancy, North Carolina, Shandora in the Bronx, Lorraine in Texas, Paula and Belle and Lucy, you guys are all so sweet, and Lorraine and Ryan wishing me a happy birthday. I really feel I'm just so warm. Your love, your good wishes really means so much to me. Thank you, my holy sisters and brothers. No matter how busy I get, I look forward to our class together every day. I apologize for the times when I just can't get around it and we've had to reschedule or do something, but this is just so important and such a blessing, and I truly believe that we learning together are adding to the peace of the world. Thank you, Mark, and welcome. Usually I don't get in on time for the beginning. So good to have you here with us, Mark, at the beginning. Also, Elle in Southern California, Marie in New York, Alan in New York City, Ilanit in Silver Spring, Chaim in Florida. Welcome, everybody. Okay, yesterday's daf was spectacular, right? Just the world trembled. Why did the world tremble? Why is thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain? Why is that in some ways the most powerful, the most important of the prohibitions? If you missed yesterday's class, go back and make it up. All the classes are always archived on our website and on the app. People who are joining us lately or don't know, we have an app. The Accidental Talmudist app. It's great. It's for iPhone and Android. You get notified when we go live. It has the halachic times. I use that all the time. From what time can we daven in the morning? When is candle lighting on Friday? Has all the zamanim, all the halachic times that you need to know every day, and especially with Shabbos coming in and holidays. All our content is available through the app, the Table for Five. You should also be subscribed to the newsletter. I mean, every week, Nina is creating amazing Torah commentaries, always based on classic sources. But she brings it down in like such a beautiful, poignant, powerful, elegant, and sourced Torah teaching. And then she does another one. And often she does 3, but at least 2 every week. I don't know where she finds the time, because she's also writing the heroes. We have the weekly Thursday hero. She's also managing the table for 5, which, inviting and editing and publishing the work of 5 writers every week on the table for 5, all commenting on one verse from that week's Torah portion. Really, I'm just so blessed that my wife and my creative partner and my spiritual partner and everything that we do at Accidental Talmudist is Nina. And really, God, thank you for the greatest gift any man ever received, which is my wife, Nina. And the second greatest gift is this community. I love you guys. Let's get into it. Our daf today is page 40 here in Tractate Shevuos, the 26th volume of the Talmud. We're picking this up on 39b. Yesterday was such a big and powerful daf that we only got a part of the way into 39b. So just, like a quarter of the way down 39b. And we're returning to the subject of our Mishnah, Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 6, discussing the oath of deposit. When, if somebody says, hey, you owe me 100 dinars, and the guy says, I don't owe you 100 dinars. I owe you 50, but I don't owe you 100. So that's a partial admission. At that point, I can administer an oath to him. I say, okay, well, I claim that you owe me the other 50. Now you've admitted that you owe half of what I claim. If you really don't owe the other 50, swear that you don't. And if he does swear, okay, then he's excused from paying the other half. But if he's unsure whether he owes it or not, swearing an oath before God with all the consequences that entails is something you should definitely think twice about doing. So if he's not sure, he should just pay. Right? If he is sure, then he can swear, but it's not really good for everybody that we're even in that situation. Okay, some other qualifications that we're talking about, this oath of deposit. How is it worded? And we got into that yesterday, particularly how the judges warn a person that if you swear falsely, that means it is equivalent to taking the name of the Lord your God in vain, and all the terrible, terrible consequences that entails, not only for yourself, but for your family, for your community, and even for the world. Now we're getting more into the actual laws of what we're swearing about and what are the minimum amounts. Let's get into it. The Mishnah, our Mishnah, number 1 in chapter 6, taught that the court administers an oath to one who admits to part of a claim only when the claim is for at least the value of 2 silver ma. Right, so silver ma, remember that we did it right at the beginning of the chapter. We talked a little bit about the coinage. The smallest coin in these times was the peruta, which is really like a penny. 8 perutas is an isser, 16 perutas is a pundion, 24 perutas is a teresis. 1 ma is 32 perutas, and presumably that is the silver ma. Right, so a silver ma is like 32 cents, right? So we're talking about 2 silver ma is going to be 64 cents. Then a silver dinar is like 192 cents. From the silver dinar, then we're going to go up to shekels, selas, and gold dinars, and a manet. Okay, but a ma, M-A apostrophe A, and a ma, or some say a ma'ah, but usually I've heard it said in my community as a ma. So that's why I'm pronouncing it that way. Okay, so 2 silver ma, so we're saying is what has to be at stake between them is at least, 64 cents in the ancient world. That's worth a lot more than 64 cents today. So, what is that going to be the equivalent of? $10, $20, $30, something like that. So there has to be at issue between them at least the 2 silver ma. And there has to be a partial admission of at least a peruta. He has to admit that at least he does owe 1 cent, but if he claims, yes, I owe you 1 cent, but I don't owe you the 2 silver ma, then there's a partial admission and the oath would be brought. But if the initial one says, you owe me 1 silver ma, or he says, you owe me 5 ma, and this guy says, listen, I owe you 4, but I don't owe you the 1. Right? So he's already admitted to at least 4. The difference between them is only 1. That's at stake. So this would not be a place for swearing an oath because they're already so close together. Right? So again, the Mishnah teaches that the court administers an oath to one who admits to part of a claim only when, okay, actually I said it wrong, only when the claim is for at least the value of 2 silver ma, I think in total. Rav and Shmuel disagree with regard to the exact meaning of this statement. Rav says that the denial of the claim must be at least the value of 2 silver ma, and Shmuel says that the claim itself must be at least the value of 2 silver ma, i.e. even if the defendant denied only 1 peruta of the claim, or conversely, if he admitted to only 1 peruta of the 2 ma claim, he is liable to take an oath. So exactly. So in my case, where I said what's between them is only 1 ma, he says you owe me 5. He says no, I admit that I owe you 4, but I don't owe you 5. Right. So the difference between them is only 1. So according to one view, there would be no oath required. According to the other view, since we're overall talking about a claim that itself is for 5 ma, then the partial admission of 4 would still trigger the oath because the claim itself overall is more than 2 ma. Rava said, the language of the Mishnah is precise in accordance with the opinion of Rav, and the biblical verses are precise in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel. That's why we got into this situation where they're disagreeing. The language of the Mishnah is precise in accordance with the opinion of Rav, as it teaches the claim must be for at least the value of 2 silver ma, and the admission must be, right, what the claim, what the plaintiff says is owed, has to be at least 2 ma, and the admission, right, what the defendant admits that he owes, has to be at least 1 peruta. That's how the Mishnah was worded. Whereas it does not teach that the minimum denial of the claim is 1 peruta, indicating that it must be more. And also we learned in a Mishnah that the minimum admission to part of a claim that renders one liable to take an oath is the value of 1 peruta, whereas that Mishnah does not teach that the minimum denial is the value of 1 peruta. And the verses in the Torah are precise in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel, as it is written with regard to the case where an oath is administered due to admission to part of a claim, if a man delivers to his neighbor silver or vessels to safeguard. It is derived from the juxtaposition of silver and vessels, that just as vessels in the plural is referring to at least 2, so too silver is referring to at least 2 ma of silver. It is derived further that just as silver is an item of substantial value, so too any item of substantial value is included. And the merciful one states in the subsequent verses that an oath is administered in a case where one says, this is it, Exodus 22:8, i.e. where the defendant admits to only part of the claim of silver or vessels and denies the rest of the claim. So evidently the denial can be for an amount less than 2 silver ma. Right? The denial can be for less than that. The denial needs only to be a peruta. The overall claim needs to be more than 2 ma for us to be in this swearing an oath of deposit situation. And Rav would respond that the phrase, this is it, is necessary to indicate admission to part of the claim, but it does not indicate the value being denied, which must be at least 2 silver ma. So the Gemara asks, and how does Shmuel derive both laws from the verse, namely that admission to part of a claim is necessary for a note to be administered, and that the denial can be less than the value of 2 ma? And the Gemara answers, it is written, this is, and it is written, it. So the repetition of these similar terms is homiletically interpreted to indicate that if the defendant denied part of the 2 ma or more claim, and admitted to the other part, he is liable to take an oath. That is, in fact, the law. And Rav would respond that the repetition should be interpreted differently. One of the two terms is stated to indicate admission of part of the claim, and the other one is stated to indicate admission of the same type of item as the claim, which we saw when we read the Mishna is also part of this law. Right? If I say, you owe me 10 bananas, and you say, Sal, what I owe you is 2 apples. Now, you could say that they're both fruit, but they are definitely different kinds of fruit, right? And so that's, if I said you owe me fruit, and what you owe me is 10 bananas, you say, no, what I owe you is 2 apples, then we're both talking about fruit. But if I specifically said you owe me 10 bananas, and you say, no, what I owe you is 2 apples, then what you have admitted to is not a partial admission to what I claim. So this would not trigger an oath of deposit, and you would be exempt from swearing an oath of deposit. So this requirement that the partial admission be of the same type of item as the claim is definitely part of the law. So how does Shmuel derive both laws from the verse, namely that the admission to part of a claim is necessary for a note to be administered, and that the denial can be less than the value of 2 ma? And the Gemara answers, it is written, this is, and it is written, it. So the repetition of these similar terms is homiletically interpreted to indicate that if the defendant denied part of the 2 ma claim, the part of the 2 ma claim and admitted to the other part, he is liable to take an oath. And Rav would respond that the repetition should be interpreted differently. One of the 2 terms is stated to indicate admission of part of the claim. The other one is stated to indicate admission of the same type of the claim. And Shmuel would respond, well, even if you do not accept the derivation from the repetitious words, don't you derive from this law by itself that the denial may be less than 2 ma, since the admission reduces the value of the claim? If the claim was for 2 ma, as derived from the verse, and the defendant admitted to only part of the claim, clearly he's admitting to something that is less than 2 ma. Then the value of the denial was clearly less than 2 ma. So rather, Rav could have said to you that when the word silver came initially, it came as a source for the value of the denial, not the claim. The denial, right? The denial means I admit only this much and the rest I deny, right? That's what the defendant is denying. So perhaps the silver came as a source for the value of the denial, not of the claim itself. As if this were not so, if it were meant to refer to the value of the claim, well then let the merciful one write in the verse, if a man delivers to his neighbor vessels to safeguard without mentioning silver. And I would say that just as vessels are at least 2, so too the claim must be for at least 2 of any item, including coins of silver, like ma. Accordingly, why do I need the word silver that the merciful one wrote? Rather, if it is not needed for the matter of the claim, apply to the matter of the denial, and derive from it that the denial must be at least the value of 2 silver ma. So how does Shmuel answer that? Well, Shmuel could have said to you that if the merciful one had written the word vessels and had not written the word silver, I would say that just as vessels are at least 2, so too the claim must be for at least 2 of any item. But we do not need it to be an item of substantial value. Therefore, the word silver teaches us that it must be an item of substantial value, like silver. You see, we have a shortage of specificity in the Torah, but we need specificity when we're going to apply these laws in the real world. And so, since they're looking at the very specific language of the Torah to extract these laws about, okay, what are the minimum values? What's the minimum value for a claim? What's the minimum value of the denial? What type of items need to be in conflict? What are we conflicting about between the plaintiff and the defendant? And once, if we use some word to derive one meaning about one aspect of this law, then that word is not going to be available for another item. And that's how we end up in these disputes, these debates between our sages. And you can see why, as I mentioned yesterday, our sages The wisest people in our history are known as students of wisdom, right? They never think that they've got it all. They're always striving to learn more, and they're always willing to learn from each other, although they can be very sharp and demanding in those disputes. Okay. So the Gemara attempts to prove Rav's opinion from the Mishna. We learned in the Mishnah that if the claimant said to the defendant, I have 2 silver ma in your possession, and the defendant responded, you have only 1 copper peruta in my possession. He admits that he owes him a penny, but he denies that he owes him the rest of the 2 ma. So he is exempt from taking an oath. Why would he be exempt from taking an oath? Is it not because the amount of the claim that was denied by the defendant was lacking? It was less than the minimum value of 2 ma. And accordingly, this is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Shmuel. But the Gemara answers, no. Shmuel could have said to you, do you maintain that the case that is taught is one where the claim was for the value of 2 ma? The claim in the case that is taught was specifically for 2 silver ma. Not, you owe me the value of 2 silver ma, right? You owe me 2 silver ma worth of money. That's not what he said. He said, what you owe me is 2 silver coins. And the other one says, what I owe you is a copper coin. That's the difference. Now, if it was only money, if it was only the value of money, there's ways to say that. But the way it's worded here, what we have is that problem of the claim was for one type of item, the admission was for something else, therefore it's not a partial admission of what was claimed, and that's why an oath of deposit would not be appropriate in this situation. Right. Do you think that it was about the value of 2 ma? The claim in the case that is taught was specifically for 2 silver ma. The defendant is exempt from swearing an oath of deposit because the claim was for silver, and he admitted to owing 1 peruta of copper. That which he claimed from him, he did not admit to at all, and that which he admitted to, the plaintiff had not claimed from him. So the Gemara asks, if so, say that the latter clause, that if the claimant said, I have 2 silver ma and 1 peruta in your possession, and the defendant responded, you have only 1 peruta in my possession, he is liable to take an oath, which is the case, because now the partial admission includes something that was part of the claim. Right? You have only 1 peruta in my possession in that situation because the claim was for 2 ma and a peruta, and the guy admits a peruta, so he's admitting to partially what was claimed of him. So that's why an oath would be appropriate. So granted, if you say that the claim was for the value of 2 ma, due to that reason he is liable in this case, unlike the previous case. Here the defendant denied a debt of 2 full ma. But if you say that the claim was specifically for 2 silver ma and 1 copper peruta, why is he liable to take an oath in this case too? That which he claimed from him, he did not admit to at all, and that which he admitted to, he had not claimed from him. And the Gemara answers, isn't this discussion only according to Shmuel? The proof was presented in order to attempt to refute the opinion of Shmuel. And doesn't Rav Nachman say that Shmuel says that if one claimed that another owes him both wheat and barley, and the defendant admitted to owing him one of them, he is liable to take an oath? Right? That's why what I just said is true, at least according to this opinion. If I say you owe me wheat and barley, right, and you say, Sal, I only owe you barley. Okay, well, you have admitted to a partial, that my claim was partially true, right? That you do owe me barley, like I said. Wheat is different than barley. But now that you've admitted to part of what I claimed, I can administer a note to you that you don't also owe me wheat. Same idea would be if I say to you, hey, listen, you owe me a car and a plunger, right? And you say, yeah, I only owe you a plunger. Okay, well, even though a plunger is totally unrelated to a car, you have admitted to part of what I claimed from you, right? Now, we could argue, okay, but the car is so ridiculously different. Am I really just forcing you to swear an oath that really you shouldn't need to swear? How is it possible? Well, maybe you really owe me a car. You don't admit that you owe me a car, but it turns out that you do owe me a plunger. And so this is a way that I can get you to swear that oath or pay me the car that you owe me. According to Shmuel, seems like it should work. Let's keep reading. Right? According to Shmuel, doesn't Rav Nachman say that Shmuel says that if one claimed that another owes him both wheat and barley, and the defendant admitted to owing him one of them, he is liable to take an oath. So here too, the claim was for two types of items, silver and copper, and the defendant admitted to owing one of the types, i.e. 1 perut of copper. Therefore, according to Shmuel, he is liable to take an oath. And this too stands to reason from the fact that the latter clause of our Mishnah teaches that if the claimant said, I have a litra of gold in your possession, that's a lot of gold, and the defendant responded, you have only a litra of silver in my possession, he is exempt. Now granted, if you say that the Mishnah is teaching a case where the claim was specifically for gold, it is due to that reason that he is exempt, as the admission was of a different type, a different item from the claim. But if you say that the claim was for the value of a litra of gold, why is he exempt? A litra is a large amount, and certainly both the claim and the denial are worth more than 2 ma. So you can see that the nuance is very important. Did he say, you owe me the value of, an ounce of gold? And the guy says, no, I owe you the value of an ounce of silver. So there, it's like he's saying, well, I owe you this much money that we could measure vis-a-vis the weight of gold or the weight of silver. But if what he said was, you owe me an ounce of silver, and the other guy says, no, I owe you an ounce of gold, or rather vice versa, you owe me an ounce of gold, the other one says, no, I owe you an ounce of silver, then those are not the same type of things. One was claiming gold, the admission was for silver. Not the value of an ounce of gold versus the value of an ounce of silver, but rather gold itself versus silver itself. There, the partial admission is not a partial admission. It is an admission to a different type of substance. So rather, it is clearly a case where the claim was specifically for 2 silver ma, and from the fact that in the latter clause the claim was specifically for gold, it should be derived that also in the former clause the claim was specifically for 2 ma, and that's why the one who admits to a peruta is not made a partial admission, whereas if somebody says, you owe me a peruta and 2 ma, and the other guy says, I only owe you the peruta, he has made a partial admission to a claim that included that type of object. The Gemara asks, if so, shall we say that this is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav? And the Gemara answers, no. Rav could have said to you that the entire Mishnah is referring to claims in terms of the value of silver, not actual silver, but the case where the claim was for a litra of gold is different. All of the other cases in the Mishnah are referring to a certain monetary value, but this case is referring to actual gold, as a litra is not a coin or a monetary unit, but rather simply a measurement of weight. Now we're on page 40a. The Gemara discusses the basis for Rav's explanation. Know that the Mishnah is referring to claims of monetary value, as it teaches in the latter clause that if the claimant said, I have a gold dinar in your possession, and the defendant responded, you have only a silver dinar, or a teresis, or a pundion, or a peruta in my possession, he is liable to take an oath, as they are all of one type. They are all coins. So granted, if you say that the claim was for the value of a gold dinar, it is due to that reason that he is liable to take an oath, as he admitted to part of the claim, since we're just talking about money. But if you say that the claim was specifically for a gold dinar, why is he liable? The claim was for gold, and he admitted to owing silver or copper. So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Elazar says, this Mishnah is referring to a case where one claimed that the defendant owes him a dinar of coins, i.e. coins worth a dinar. The claim was for specific coins and not a monetary value. Since the claim concerned coins and not a specific weight of metal, and all coins are used for commercial transactions, all types of coins are considered of the same type. And it teaches us that a peruta is included in the category of coin. So according to this explanation, the language of the Mishnah is also precise, as it teaches the defendant is liable to take an oath, as they are all of one type. They are all coins. In other words, even a peruta is a type of coin. So if the claim was for coins, and then he's just talking about a type of coin, and the guy admits to owing other coins, then that is considered a partial admission. But if the claim was specifically for silver coins, and the guy says, I only owe you copper coins, then it would not be a partial admission of the same type as the claim. The Gemara asks, and how would Rav, who holds that the claim in this case was for the value of a dinar, explain the fact that the Mishnah states, as they are all of one type, they are all coins? Why does it matter that they are all of one type? And the Gemara answers that according to Rav, the reason the defendant is liable to take an oath is that because the claim is for the value of a dinar, all descriptions of monetary value based on different coins have one status under law, one din under halacha, that they are all coins. And it is of no significance that they are made of different materials if it can be established clearly that what the claim was, even though it might be measured with a kind of coin, but that really the claim was for a value, right? A monetary amount. And therefore, if the other guy admits to owing a monetary amount, it's a partial admission. Whereas, for example, if the guy was particular and saying, listen, you owe me silver dollars. We had agreed that you owe me silver dollars. This was a debt that needs to be paid in silver dollars. And believe me, now money is kind of all pretty fungible. In fact, these days, so many of us don't even see money. We pay each other with Venmo, with Wire, with Cash App, with credit cards, of course. But in ancient times, there was very much that there were lots of different kinds of money around, and people would specify the kind of money that they would accept in payment for merchandise or in payment of a debt to the exclusion of other kinds of money. No wooden nickels, for example, which was definitely a real saying and a real, rule that people had because wooden nickels could obviously be forged. Not everyone would accept them. There was a time when banknotes, right? We only think of cash as something that's issued by a government, right? Whoever heard of private cash? But that used to be a thing, that banks would put out bank notes, right? And it was sort of cash issued by particular banks and not necessarily national banks. And there were types of coins that were acceptable. When there was the Roman Empire, a lot of people would say, we want Roman coins that are going to be valuable everywhere and not the local coins of any particular region or, whatever it's called. What's the word I'm looking for? Particular sub-regions of the empire, provinces. So demanding a particular kind of coin could be something that the judges would understand. No, when you guys made an agreement, it was, and the guy's now bringing a claim, it was for a particular coin. And the defendant who is admitting that he owes something is admitting to a particular kind of coin, which is a different kind. And that's why we don't have a partial admission that matches up with the claim, and therefore no oath would be appropriate. On the other hand, if we can really say, what these guys are talking about, what their agreement was all about, is a certain value, no matter what particular denomination or regional coinage is going to be paid in, and one says you owe me this much money generally, and the other one says, no, I owe you this much money, there is a partial admission. Hopefully I got to stop repeating myself. I think it's been made clear. Okay. Where was I? I knew I was on 40A. Okay. And how would Rav, who holds that the claim in this case was the value of a dinar, explain? Wait, what's it? I already did that. Tuma. Okay. So come in here another proof that a claim, well, maybe I didn't read this, just be careful. Okay, the Gemara rejects this suggestion, says, no, Rabbi Elazar explains that the latter clause of the Mishnah is referring specifically to actual items in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel, as it teaches explicitly, as they are all one type, they are all coins, but the former clause can be interpreted either in accordance with the opinion of Rav or in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel. So the Gemara suggests, come in here another proof that a claim for a coin is referring to its value rather than the specific coin. It is taught in a Baraisa that if the claimant says, I have a coined gold dinar in your possession. So a coined gold dinar would seem to be as opposed to an amount of gold weighing 1 dinar's worth of gold. He wants a coined dinar, right? Presumably by a government that's trustworthy, that they know that this is a gold dinar. So he says, I have a coined gold dinar in your possession, meaning you owe me a coined gold dinar. And the defendant responded, you have only a silver dinar in my possession. So he is liable to take an oath, as the claim and the admission are both referring to a coin. So the Gemara infers the reason this claim is referring specifically to a coin is that the claimant says to him, you owe me a coined gold dinar. But if the claim was for an unspecified gold dinar, i.e. without specifying that it was coined, then the claimant is saying to him that he owes him an item with the value of a dinar, not necessarily a coin, in accordance with the opinion of Rav. And Rav Ashi said in response that according to the opinion of Shmuel, this is what the Baraisa is saying. Anyone who says a gold dinar is considered like one who says a coined gold dinar, i.e. is referring to the coin and not to its value. And Rabbi Chia teaches a Baraisa in support of the opinion of Rav. If the claimant said, I have a sela in your possession, and the defendant responded, you have only a sela minus 2 silver ma in my possession, he is liable to take an oath. If the defendant responded, I owe you only a sela minus 1 silver ma, he is exempt. So clearly the reason is that he denied less than 2 ma of the claim in accordance with the opinion of Rav, right? So Rav, what we've been arguing on all this time is what we follow Shmuel, right? Shmuel says that the claim itself has to be for at least 2 ma, and the denial has to be for at least 1 peruta. That the denial has to be at least 1 peruta, that the admission has to be at least 1 peruta. And Rav says, no, that the denial has to be at least 2 silver ma, right? In other words, that what is at stake between them has to be at least 2 silver ma. So if one says, you owe me 5 ma, and the other one says, I owe you 4 ma, according to Rav, we don't have an oath situation. According to Shmuel, we do, because the claim itself is more than 2 ma, and the difference between them is greater than 1 peruta, even though it's less than 2 ma. That's why we know we follow Shmuel. New subject. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says that Shmuel says the requirement that the claim be at least, the total claim from the plaintiff has to be at least 2 silver ma, in order to render the defendant liable to take an oath, was taught only with regard to a case where the oath is due to the claim of the creditor and the partial admission of the debtor. But in a case where the defendant's liability to take an oath is due to the claim of the creditor and the testimony of one witness in support of the claim, then, even if the claimant claimed from him only 1 peruta, the defendant is liable to take an oath. Now we're in a totally different path to an oath of deposit. So far, what we've talked about is that somebody says, hey, you owe me $100, and the other one says, no, I only owe you $50. There were not 2 witnesses to establish when the loan was made, what it was for. There's no promissory note that was signed by witnesses. There's only the word of the plaintiff and the defendant. So if the defendant said nothing, that's it. The plaintiff couldn't get any money from him. It's only because he admitted to owing part of what is claimed within that, de minimis requirements that we've just been talking about, that we get to, okay, then swear an oath that you don't owe the rest. Now we're going to go to a different situation. There's not 2 witnesses, and you need 2 witnesses to establish a matter. But there is 1 witness. Now, if somebody committed murder and 1 witness saw it, does the death penalty apply? No. We cannot convict by the testimony of a single witness in a death penalty case, nor can we make money change hands in a case of monetary law, nor can we establish, for example, that a cow, which we thought was kosher, now is not kosher, and there's not two witnesses to establish that. But what we're learning now is that in a case of monetary law, the testimony of a single witness is significant enough, is powerful enough to compel an oath of deposit from the defendant. I say, you owe me $100, right? You say, I don't owe you anything. My witness comes and says, you do owe him $100, but I only have the single witness. That's enough for you to now have to swear an oath, even though you didn't admit partially to anything. Okay? That's what situation we're in now. But in the case where the defendant's liability to take an oath is due to the claim of the creditor and the testimony of one witness in support of the claim, then, even if the claimant claimed from him only one peruta, the defendant is liable to take an oath. I say you owe me 1 penny. You say I don't owe you anything. I bring a witness that you owe me a penny. Now we can compel an oath from you. If that really is a penny, just pay the penny. Don't take an oath. You never want to take an oath in case you're making a mistake. What is the reason for this distinction? As it is written, one witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin. Deuteronomy 19:15. It is inferred from here that it is for any iniquity or for any sin that he may not rise up, as the testimony of one witness is not enough for that purpose. But he may rise up to render one liable to take an oath. And it is taught in a baraisa, in any place where two witnesses render a defendant liable to pay money, right, a case of monetary law, the testimony of one witness renders him liable to take an oath. Therefore, since two witnesses render the defendant liable to pay if the claim is worth at least 1 peruta, so too one witness renders him liable to take an oath with regard to a claim of this value. Now, this is again, testimony of the single witness will not extract money from the defendant, but we will compel him to swear an oath. Now, if he's some kind of godless person who doesn't care and is willing to swear a false oath, we're not going to get money out of him. But such a person put himself in a terrible position, as we learned yesterday, how consequential and terrifying and, creating a guilt that never goes away if one swears falsely, because that's taking the name of the Lord in vain. New subject. And Rav Nachman says that Shmuel says, if one claimed that another owed him wheat and barley, and the defendant admitted to owing him one of these types, he is liable to take an oath, as he admitted to part of a claim. There are 2 different types. Since the claim was for 2 different types of things, and the defendant admitted to one of them, we have a partial admission, and therefore an oath for the rest. Rav Yitzchak said to him, you have spoken well. And so also said Rabbi Yochanan. Very interesting discussion now follows. Rabbi Yochanan said, you've spoken well, right? Rabbi Yitzchak says to Rav Nachman, who spoke in the name of Shmuel, you spoke well about the partial admission when 2 types of things are claimed. And now we add that Rabbi Yochanan also said he spoke well. And now we get, it's almost like the joke of, from another century, but kind of Jewish mother jokes, where she gives her son, 2 sweaters for Hanukkah, and he goes to her house for a meal, and he's wearing one of the sweaters, and what does she say? What, you didn't like the other sweater? So now that we've brought down Rabbi Yochanan, who's the great Rabbi Yochanan, why don't we just say, oh, wonderful, so it must be true, right? Shmuel says it, Rav Nachman says it, Rabbi Yitzchak says it, and Rabbi Yochanan agrees with it, so it must be true. Well, what does the Gemara say? Well, if Rabbi Yochanan agrees with it, by inference, does this mean that Reish Lakish disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan with regard to this matter? Since Rabbi Yitzchak mentioned that Rabbi Yochanan agreed, and he did not reference Reish Lakish, who often engages in disputes with Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara answers, there is no record of Reish Lakish expressing his opinion on this subject at all. And there are those who say that this is because he was tarrying and remaining silent waiting for Rabbi Yochanan to finish his statement, and Rabbi Yitzchak did not find out whether or not he subsequently disagreed with him. And there are those that say that Reish Lakish was drinking at the time. I don't think it means drinking alcohol. He was literally just drinking water, so he couldn't speak. And therefore, he remained silent, and he did not respond to Rabbi Yochanan's statement. I mean, from this, it seems like, is it true that whenever we hear an opinion from Rabbi Yochanan, we have to determine, usually Reish Lakish disagrees, and if he doesn't disagree, we're going to hear that he agrees. So if we hear Rabbi Yochanan's opinion by itself, we have to ask, well, what did Reish Lakish say? Did he agree or not? It's very interesting. Remember that Reish Lakish was Rabbi Yochanan's student, but he was so excellent of a student that he rose from the level of student to partner, basically, colleague. And they argued over everything, but when Reish Lakish predeceased Rabbi Yochanan was inconsolable. And he had no one to learn with who was at his level. And he just really went into depression. He felt like he couldn't, learn and teach without having somebody who sharpened all his learning by arguing with him at the level that Reish Lakish did. Now, let us say that the wording of the Mishnah supports Shmuel's opinion. If one claimed that another owes him wheat and the defendant admitted to owing him barley, he is exempt. And Rabban Gamliel deems him liable to take an oath. And the Gemara infers the reason he is exempt, according to the first Tana, is that he claimed that he owes him wheat and the defendant admitted to owing him barley. But if the claim was for both wheat and barley, and the defendant admitted to owing him one of them, it can be inferred that he is liable to take the oath, per the opinion of Shmuel. So the Gemara rejects this proof. No. You're reading into what the Mishnah actually said. No, it is possible that the same is true, i.e. that even if the claim was for both wheat and barley, the defendant is exempt. And the fact that the Mishnah states that the first Tana and Rabban Gamliel disagree with regard to a case where the claim was specifically for wheat, and the defendant admitted to owing him barley, is in order to convey to you the far-reaching nature of the opinion of Rabban Gamliel, that the defendant is liable to take an oath even if his admission is not at all the same type of the claim. In other words, if I say to you, you owe me wheat, and you say, no, I owe you barley, then the Mishnah would say, you don't have to swear an oath because what I claimed from you, you did not admit to, and what you admitted to, I did not claim from you. Rabban Gamliel would say, listen, I asked for wheat, you admitted to barley, we're talking about grain, even though they have different names, different species, very different things, we're in the realm of grain, since you're admitting to grain. I didn't say, you owe me grain, and the grain you owe me is wheat. And you said, I do owe you grain, but the grain I owe you is barley. That's not what we said. I said, you owe me wheat. You said, no, I owe you barley. Rabban Gamliel would say, that's close enough. And you need to swear an oath for the partial admission. The Mishnah said, no. Now the Gemara suggests, coming here, another proof from the Mishnah, if one claimed that another owes him vessels and land. There's no oaths associated with land. There are oaths associated with one who claims that the other owes him vessels, which is to say movable property. And the one admits to some kind of partial admission about the movable property, that would trigger an oath. If I say you owe me land, and you say I don't owe you land, or I say you owe me land, and you say, well, I say you owe me 2 fields. And you say, well, I owe you one of those fields, I don't owe you the other. That's definitely a partial admission of the same type of what I claimed, but there would be no oath because we don't swear oaths with respect to land. So the question now is, but if I say you owe me vessels and land, and you say, I owe you vessels, I don't owe you land, since you admitted to the vessels, can I make you swear an oath on the land? Answer, no, because you admitted that what I claimed about the vessels, you admit it. So what I asked about the vessels, you're going to pay me the vessels. But what I said about the land, you're not admitting to, so nothing to do with the land. But as we'll see, there might be a situation where there can be a partial admission on part of the claim, and using that, we can hinge into making you swear about the land also. Right? The Gemara suggests, come in here another proof from the Mishnah. If one claimed that another owes him vessels and land, and the defendant admitted to owing him vessels, but denied the claim of land. Or conversely, if he admitted to owing him land, but denied the claim of the vessels, there's no oath. If he admitted to part of the claim about the land, he is exempt. If he admitted to part of the claim about the vessels, he is liable to take an oath. you owe me a field, you owe me 2 fields, and you owe me 2 vessels. You say, what I owe you is 1 vessel. So now we have a partial admission on a claim that includes movable property. So you are going to have to swear an oath that you don't owe me the 2nd vessel. And now that you're swearing an oath because of a partial admission on the portion of the claim that involved vessels, can I also make you swear an oath about the land? The Gemara infers, now we're on page 40b, the reason that he is exempt in the first cases is that the claim was for vessels and land, as a claim with regard to land is not subject to an oath. But if the claim was for vessels of one type and vessels of another type, or for wheat and barley, similar to the case of a claim for vessels and land, in that the defendant admitted to owing one type and denied owing the other type, he is liable to take an oath. The Gemara rejects the inference. No, it is possible that the same is true, i.e. that even if the claim was for vessels of one type and vessels of another type, and the defendant admitted to owing one type and denied owing the other type, he is exempt. And the reason that the Mishna teaches specifically the case where the claim is for vessels and land is that this teaches us that in a case where the defendant admitted to part of a claim with regard to vessels, he is liable to take an oath concerning the land as well. Right? What I just said. I said you owe me 2 fields and 2 vessels. Right? Let's say 2 silver cups. And you say, I owe you 1 silver cup. So you've admitted partially to the claim that I made about silver cups. I said, you owe me 2 silver cups. You say 1. Now I can make you swear that you don't owe me the other silver cup. And while I've got you making an oath about part of a claim that even though normally you don't make oaths about land, but my claim in the beginning was 2 fields and 2 silver cups. You admitted 1 silver cup. You're going to have to swear to me that you don't owe me the other silver cup. And now I can adjure you to swear that you don't owe me the land as you claim because it was part of the original claim. The Gemara asks, what is this teaching us? Does it teach the law that an admission to part of a claim about vessels also binds the land to the oath? We learn this in a Mishna and Tractate Kiddushin, page 26a. When there is a claim against a person for movable property and land, and he is liable to take an oath concerning the movable property because there was a partial admission within the part of the claim that involved movable property, the movable property binds the property that serves as a guarantee, i.e. land, so that he is forced to take an oath concerning it too. And the Gemara answers, this Mishnah is the primary reference to this law, as it discusses the laws of oaths, whereas that Mishnah in Kiddushin only cites the discussion of oaths incidentally in the context of a broader survey of the difference between movable property and land. That's the issue over there. Here we're talking more about oaths. And Rabbi Chia bar Abba disagrees with Shmuel and says that Rabbi Yochanan says if one claimed that another owes him both wheat and barley and the latter admitted to owing him one of them, he is exempt from taking an oath. And the Gemara asks, but doesn't Rabbi Yitzchak say to Rav Nachman, you have spoken well in the name of Shmuel, i.e. saying that the defendant is liable to take an oath in the aforementioned case. And so also said Rabbi Yochanan. So if so, Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Shmuel and not with Rabbi Chia bar Abba. So the Gemara answers, they are Amoraim, and they disagree with regard to Rabbi Yochanan, who is a Tana. They're disagreeing about what Rabbi Yochanan said. The Gemara suggests, coming here a proof against the opinion of Rabbi Chia bar Abba from the Mishnah. If one claimed that another owes him wheat, and the defendant admitted to owing him barley, he is exempt. And Rabban Gamliel deems him liable to take an oath. And the Gemara infers the reason he's exempt is that he claimed that he owes him wheat, and the defendant admitted to owing him barley. But if the claim was for both wheat and barley, and the defendant admitted to owing one of them, he would be liable to take an oath. That's per the opinion of Shmuel, and that is the law. But the Gemara rejects this proof. It is possible that the same is true, i.e. that even if the claim was for both wheat and barley, the defendant is exempt. And the fact that the Mishnah teaches specifically this case where the claim was specifically for wheat is in order to convey to you the far-reaching nature of the opinion of Rabban Gamliel, as he holds that even in this case one will be liable to take an oath, but we haven't proven that Shmuel's view is correct. And the Gemara suggests another proof. Come in here. If one claimed that another owes him vessels and land, the defendant admitted to owing him vessels but denied the claim of land, or if he admitted to owing him land but denied the claim of vessels, he is exempt from taking an oath. If he admitted to part of the claim with regard to the land, he is exempt because there's no oaths about land. But if he admitted to part of the claim with regard to the vessels, partial admission with regard to movable property, then he is liable to take an oath. And the Gemara infers the reason he is exempt in the first cases, is that the claim was for vessels and land. As a result, as a claim with regard to land is not subject to an oath, but if the claim was for vessels of one type and vessels of another type, similar to the case of a claim for vessels and land, in that the defendant admitted to owing one type and denied owing the other type, then he would be liable to take an oath, but the Gemara rejects this. Making about vessels and land already brings in so many other issues that it's hard to learn out from that what Shmuel and Rav are arguing on, whether if you claim barley and wheat, and the other one admits only to barley, are we going to make them swear an oath or not? Learning that out from you owe me land and vessels, and the guy admits just to vessels, too dissimilar, because land brings in all these other issues. The Gemara rejects it. It is possible that the same is true, that even if the claim was for vessels of one type and vessels of another type, he is exempt, right? Arguing, saying that Shmuel's view of a claim for wheat and barley would be wrong, according to our Mishnah. And the Mishnah teaches specifically, because remember that Rav and Shmuel are Amoraim, sages of the Gemara, right? A Mishnah is worded and formulated by Tanaim, sages of the earlier period, the Mishnah, right? So when we're arguing on a Mishnah, right, we're talking about Amoraim who are arguing with each other about what a Mishnah says. So it is possible that the same is true, that even if the claim was for vessels of one type and vessels of another type, he would be exempt. And the Mishnah teaches specifically the case where the claim is for vessels and land, because this teaches us that if the defendant admitted to part of a claim with regard to the vessels, he is liable to take an oath concerning the land as well. And the Gemara asks, what is this teaching us? Does it teach the law that an admission to part of the claim about vessels also binds the land? We learn this in Kiddushin 26a. The movable property binds the property that serves as a guarantee, so that he is forced to take an oath concerning it too, but only because the original claim included a claim for vessels, and there was a partial admission with regard to the vessels. The Gemara answers, this Mishnah is the primary reference to this law, whereas that Mishnah cites it incidentally. We're not going to learn out from what's being argued in Kiddushin about the differences between vessels and land. We're not going to learn the primary law about when oaths are due and when they're not, because we're learning it here in Shevuos. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, get them in now. Rabbi Abba Bar Memel raised an objection to the opinion of Rabbi Chia Bar Abba from a Baraisa if one claimed that another owes him an ox, and the latter admitted to owing him a sheep, or conversely, if the claim was for a sheep and the defendant admitted to owing him an ox. He is exempt from taking an oath. If one claimed that the other owes him an ox and a sheep, and the defendant admitted to owing him one of them, he is liable to take an oath. Sounds a lot like Shmuel's view of wheat and barley. You owe me wheat and barley. No, I only owe you barley. According to Shmuel, you swear the oath. You owe me a cow and a sheep. You say, no, I only owe you a sheep. Sounds like I should be able to get a partial oath from you. If I say you owe me a cow and you say, no, I owe you a sheep, then you would be exempt because what I'm claiming is not what you're admitting to. Right? If one claimed that another owes him an ox and the latter admitted to owing him a sheep, or conversely, the claim was for a sheep and the defendant admitting to owing him an ox, exempt. But if one claims that the other owes him an ox and a sheep, and the defendant admitted to owing one of them, he is liable to take an oath. Rabbi Chia Bar Abba said to him in response, in accordance with whose opinion is this Baraisa? It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Gamliel. Like Rabban Gamliel, it sounds like if I say you owe me a sheep and you say no, I owe you. I say you owe me an ox and you say no, I owe you a sheep. Sounds like Rabban Gamliel would say close enough. I claim livestock. You admitted to livestock. I didn't say you owe me livestock and the type you owe me is an ox. You said no, the type of livestock I owe you is a sheep. But perhaps, according to Rabban Gamliel, you'd have to swear since we're both talking about livestock generally. Right? Is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Gamliel, who deems the defendant liable to take an oath even if his admission was not of the same type as the item of the claim. Rabbi Abba Bar Memel responded, if it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Gamliel, the defendant should be liable to take an oath even in the first clause of the Baraisa where the claim is for an ox and the admission is with regard to a sheep. And Rabbi Chia Bar Abba explained, rather, in accordance with whose opinion is this? It is in accordance with the opinion of Admon, who holds that the admission must be for the same type as the claim, and maintains nevertheless that in a case where one claims that another owes him jugs of oil, and the latter admits that he owes him jugs but not the oil, the defendant is liable to take an oath. And I am not dismissing your objection insubstantially. Rather, it is a set tradition in the mouth of Rabbi Yochanan, who would say, in accordance with whose opinion is this Baraisa? It is in accordance with the opinion of Admon. Right? That was a little bit different. If I say you owe me jugs of oil, and you say I only owe you jugs. So is that a partial admission? Did I say you owe me jugs and oil? I said you owe me jugs of oil. Am I really saying that you owe me jugs? I'm saying that you owe me jugs full of oil, right? You say I only owe you the jugs. That's so different that they're going to argue whether it's a partial admission or not, right? What does Admon say? It must be the same type of the claim, but nevertheless, where one claims that another owes him jugs of oil and the latter admits that he owes him jugs but not oil, the defendant is liable to take an oath. It is a partial admission. Jugs were included in my claim, even though I don't really care about the jugs. What I care about is the oil. But since it was included, I said jugs of oil, you admitting that you owe jugs, that's enough to trigger the partial admission and therefore an oath. Okay, Guy, the logic of the monetary system eludes me still. But tonight, you, Sal, have made it a little bit more precise. Thank you. I hope it was useful. I assume you're talking about the ancient monetary system, which, I mean, we went through the stack of coinages. That helps a little, but I mean, it's so hard to remember this stuff and keep it straight. If you're talking about what eludes you is monetary systems generally and why we use money, that's not a bad claim. That's not a bad claim, right? Our caveman ancestors would say, oh, money. Yeah. But money definitely is useful. The way that we prize money above, even what it represents, the ability to get along in this world, and we just start to, idolize money. That's a huge problem in our society. Joseph, Talmudic times were certainly thousands of years before central banking and fiat currencies, just so. Bell, there's an amusing I.B. Singer Hanukkah, a Hanukkah story by I.B. Singer, in which the children are trying to make sense of the different coins that they were given as Hanukkah gelt. I remember my Polish grandmother telling me that her father would rather barter than trying to deal with the vagaries of Russian, Polish, and German money, right? Especially our ancestors who lived in the Pale of Settlement, right? Ukraine, Russia, Poland, Lithuania, at times not so far away, Hungary, like the borders kept changing. And there are lots of even, people our age who remember their grandmothers saying, I don't really know what country I lived in. We had to speak multiple languages. The borders kept changing. It was never really clear to us what country we lived in, and there was reasons for that. And finally, Sharon, if someone is exempt from an oath, what are the alternative recourses? So exempt from an oath, right? Basically not much, because if you can't even produce the single witness, you say, you owe me $100. And you're like, no, I don't. I don't have even a single witness. If I had a single witness, I could compel you to swear an oath. But I don't have the single witness. And you're not admitting that you owe part of that debt. No recourse. I can say to you, you and I both know. You know in your heart that you owe me that money. But can I get a beis din or a rabbinic court to compel you to pay me? No. Can I even get the beis din to compel you to swear an oath that you don't owe me? No. Right? So that's why we want to avoid being in situations like that by A, dealing with people that we trust and we think are scrupulously honest like we are, and B, even when we know they're scrupulously honest and we're scrupulously honest, but if we're going to do a transaction, we should have witnesses. That's what we should have. Nowadays, we have lawyers and contracts that go on and on and on and on and on, and that's how we try to protect ourselves. But does that mean there's never litigation? Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. That's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Tuesday at the regular time, 6 p.m.